Hello, hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Garrett Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of Awaken the Guardian. Today we are continuing our conversation with Veronica Butler, formerly of the Gilbert Police Department here in Arizona. We'd like to call it Mesa's little sister. But we're tackling this subject of PTSD, this subject of critical incidents, this subject of what to do when things aren't quite working out. But it's a very unique angle. Veronica was a police officer in Gilbert for 14 years. About 12 years on, she had a critical incident that most other police officers never have to deal with. She came across a murder-suicide scene. There were 4 victims, and one was the shooter. But one of those victims was a 15-month-old little girl who she tried to save in her arms while being surrounded by other male officers who, frankly, had no idea what to do at this point. So, we're now delving into this subject. 3 years later, she had another critical incident. And during this other critical incident, the psychologist asked her about the first critical incident, which at first didn't do anything for you.
Right.
But eventually, now all of a sudden, somebody opened Pandora's box.
Right.
And this flood of emotions and feelings start coming. So that is kind of where we left off. And that is where we're going to continue today. So tell me, the psychologist has you looking at an iPad, watching a ball bounce back and forth across the screen. And all of a sudden, the movie starts. The movie of that entire incident starts in your mind again.
Yep.
And so what happens?
She realizes something's not right with me. She asked me to stop. She asked me what happened. I told her what had happened with my movie, that now it was a movie. It was there. I could hear everything, see everything. And she just said, okay, good. That's what's supposed to happen. Keep going. And so...
So what's going on with your body at this point, right? In your mind, you're replaying all these incidents.
Right.
Well, what's going on with your body?
Like my heart rate just went through the roof. I was feeling like all sweaty and clammy, and my legs were shaking. Like I just was a mess.
Okay, so she tells you to continue through this, and what ends up happening?
I just go through it. It stayed the same way. The movie reel just kept playing. I probably had to look at that iPad for about another 20 minutes. And then I started to get a headache through it. And when we were done, when she decided we were done, she asked me to stop and then just said, okay, well, you're going to feel like you had a really good workout. So just rest all weekend. Just take it easy, get some rest, but it's going to feel like a good workout. And that was it.
So you're like, all right, well, I guess that's that. So you go home, and what ends up happening?
The headache I had this just crazy headache that came on, and it didn't go away. It probably lasted a good year after that, but it was like my brain just sat in a boiling pot of water is what it felt like. My heart rate, my resting heart rate was about 110 after that, doing nothing, just hanging out. It never went away. I had to go back and see her the following week, which is, was
this before or after work? Did you try to go to work in between this?
That was always on my Friday.
On your Friday?
Yeah.
Okay. So you tried to go back, or you did go back and see her before you went back to work?
No, I did my following week of work and then saw her again on my Friday.
Okay. So you went back to see her, and what happened?
I told her what was happening, because in that week, not only was I having those feelings, but all of a sudden I was having every dead person in my head again. Every child death, every suicide, just everybody that I had encountered on the job was there. Like they all wanted their time again. And so I was dealing with that. It wasn't even just nightmares.
How is this affecting your, not just your work life, but your personal life?
It was crazy. Like I was never one of those, go back to that emotionless person that I was. Like I was never one who even comprehended depression or people who had feelings like that. Like I was always just, if there's a problem, handle it, fix it, or move on. It wasn't like sit around and let it get to you. So for me, like all of a sudden now I'm angry. I'm starting to get into, now I know like a depression. I wanted nothing to do with anybody. I was having these nightmares again, but I was also having them, all day, like eyes wide open. They were there all the time. went to work that week like normal, just that checklist, get in, do the briefing, load your car, get your stuff, go have your coffee, take the calls for service, do the traffic stops you need to do, get to the end of your shift, go home. And for me, I would, at this point, was just going home and literally laying on my couch and passing out until somebody would tell me to go up to my bedroom and go to sleep for the night. Like, I became ineffective at home. I did nothing. I didn't participate in anything. Everything about me just completely changed.
So you started to distance yourself. Work became even more of like this checklist, but your home life just became a train wreck.
Right. And I really didn't see I was in such a bad place. I couldn't even see what was happening. I just knew that I wasn't okay. That broken, that was definitely me. I started to feel just broken. I thought this was the rest of my life. Like, this is just what it was going to be like forever. I would never be who I used to be. I knew I loved my kids. I could no longer feel love. I just, I never really got to the point where I thought about suicide or anything, but I did get to a place where I just didn't care if I lived. Like, I no longer, as a mom, I think the worst thing we can think about is our kids having to not have us around anymore. Mm-hmm. And I felt so useless at home because I was non-participant. I wasn't making meals. I wasn't doing homework. I wasn't doing all the normal routine things that I had done, that I just felt useless. And I thought I got to a point where I didn't care if I was there anymore. I thought they would probably be better off if I wasn't, because then they aren't having to deal with who I had become. Right.
So everything in your personal life is literally crumbling to the ground. Mm-hmm. You try to go back to the psychologist. What happens?
So I went back. I told her what was happening. She seemed surprised. She suddenly stopped communication with me, where we were, she would email me and text me before. She stopped. She had excuses for why she could no longer see me. It was always something. I have this other meeting I have to get to, or I fell down, I hurt my ankle, I can't go anywhere. Eventually, she just discontinued all contact with me.
So she basically abandoned you. She opened up Pandora's box.
Right.
She's like, here you go, Merry Christmas, and she bounced. That was it.
Yep.
So, like, what are you trying to do? Your personal life is falling apart. You have no desire to do anything with your family. Your mind is a train wreck.
Right.
You're not able to process anything. And then the person who's supposed to help you, who opened up this whole box, is gone.
Gone. Yeah. It was hard. I've always felt like I've always had that need for control. And I always thought I was very good at keeping everything under control. And so not being able to control what was happening to me or to even understand it, because I really didn't know. I found out afterwards that whole iPad thing was the process of EMDR.
For those that don't know, what is EMDR?
I don't even know the actual.
I'm going to find it.
It's like eye movement. I don't even know.
We'll find it. Okay, so keep going.
So, I'm going through all this. I don't understand it. I don't know what's happening. I've never been out of control. And it's there. I felt like I exhausted my friends at work talking to them about it. And I wasn't sharing like the feelings, the depression, the sadness, anything. The only thing I showed and expressed was anger. I showed up in briefing, and everything that anybody said, regardless of good or bad, like I was that person that was just angry and bitter and had nothing but negative things to say. So if you wanted to have a good day, stay away from me, because I was going to bring everybody down.
I want you guys to hear that. Like, some people become like isolated and don't talk to anyone or anything. Some people are the exact opposite. And for V, like the way she manifested that things weren't working is she became angry. Like literally yelling and screaming at people, get out of my way, and I'm sure there's some other few choice, colorful words in there as well.
Yes.
But think about this, like, how many times do you guys come across a coworker or a family member or something like that, and they're super angry, and you're like, man, why are they so angry? And the only thing you want to do is punch them in the face.
Yep.
And the truth is that they could be suffering from something like this, like literally unable to process. So therefore, I'm just going to lash out in anger at everybody.
Yep.
And by the way, the EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Don't ask me to repeat that. It's a form of psychotherapy in which the person being treated is asked to recall distressing images while generating one type of bilateral sensory input, such as side-to-side eye movements or hand tapping. There you go. That's as far as I'm getting into that. Never experienced it, so I will openly say that. But you can see the results for Veronica here. So back to you. Personal life, zero feelings and emotions. Everything's just kind of falling apart. Work life, angry bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you're married at the time, right?
We weren't married yet.
But you had somebody you were living with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that relationship like?
To be honest, I don't even remember. Like, so much of my home life, I feel like I just wasn't there anymore.
So you just kind of checked out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally just out of it completely.
Okay. And how long does this period of time, right? A psychologist abandons you. You kind of out on your own, lashing out in anger. Like, people are, I'm sure, starting to see this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So how long is it before somebody actually reaches out and like offers you something?
It was a good couple months. I was on a call, you know, and all of my calls at that point just became a point of frustration. I didn't like my victims. I didn't like the reporting parties. Like, their problems just became just such a pain to me. Like, it was literally like, there are bigger things in this world. Why are you calling for these things? But I was on this call, and it was a sad situation. I mean, an elderly grandma, it was a domestic issue, but it was pretty crappy. And I was angry. I was angry at the reporting party, the whole situation. Like, it could have been handled completely different. But while I was there, I got a random text message from a guy that used to work with us. He had retired because he had been having his own problems with the job and stuff. And so he had retired a few months before, but somehow he was in the loop enough to find out that something wasn't right with me. And like I said, at that point, I hadn't shared feelings with anybody. I was just angry, and I had like those headaches that didn't go away. I mean, my supervisor would have me come in throughout the day and just ice my head. It was so bad. So anyways, he sends me this text message, and it was just like, hey, I heard you're going through some shit. Reach out, you know, I can help you with stuff. And it was the first time anybody, you know, I worked with great people. They just didn't know what to say or do.
Say that again.
I worked with great people, but none of them knew what to say or do.
And this is what happens, right? And we're talking specific law enforcement right now, but really it doesn't matter where you are or what situation you're in. Well, none of us are trained in this.
Right.
None of us really know what to do, right? You see somebody going off, you see somebody going sideways, and most of us are like, I'm just going to leave her by herself and let her handle her own stuff, right? And so think about this. Like, I want you guys to see as this story goes on that the reason your life shifted was because one person reached out. That's it. One person.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna share this stat real quick. This seems to be a good time for it. He had to deal with his own stuff, right? And we're not here to talk about anybody else's stuff, right? But he had his own stuff to deal with. But listen, there's an article on the Crime Report. Go to thecrimereport.org, and it's titled "Dirty Little Secret," right? This dirty little secret of law enforcement. What it talks about is that law enforcement has a high risk of PTSD, but that there was little empathy or counseling for the stresses of the job.
Right.
Little counseling or empathy for the stresses of the job. And you're hearing this, right? According to the study cited by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, between 7% and 19% of police officers experience some type of post-traumatic stress disorder. 7 to 19%. compared to the 3.5% of the general population. So, yes, we come across a lot of different stuff, and most people don't. And so the likelihood of us being unable to process this because we don't have anything to process it with is higher. Like, I remember coming across a similar incident where there's an older lady calls 911. She's screaming on the phone. We don't know what's going on. She keeps saying gun, 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 and we're just freaking out. So we show up, adrenaline pumping, bust in the door, go inside. It's an older lady holding the phone, bawling, crying, screaming. She can't say anything. She points to the room, go into the room. Her elderly husband had taken a gun to his head, laying in bed, basically blew his brains out. Like, there was brain matter scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
There was chunks of skull stuck in the ceiling. Like, and we're sitting here trying to process this, and there's the breathing, the angular breathing that he's trying to breathe, but he's not. Like, it's a messed up situation all the way around. And then we got to go home and like try and process normal family life. Like, I got to go home, and my wife's like, "Hey, can you take out the trash?" Oh, by the way, Junior needs help with his algebra.
Right.
And you're like, I just saw like it was, and so what do? Hide it, suppress it, stuff it inside.
Yep.
Until one day, like, you just can't take it anymore. Or in your particular case, somebody decides to unlock that little storage container and let them all out.
Right.
But here's the key. The key is we're all going to go through this. Doesn't matter if you're law enforcement or you're some other profession. There's going to be some type of critical incident in your life where you don't know how to process it. And you're going to see people respond in different ways. In your case, at work, it was anger. At home, it was literally complete disconnect where you were on autopilot.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say luck because I don't like using the word luck, but through God's grace or whatever you want to call it, somebody reached out to you. A random text message reached out to you, said, if you need to talk, if you need help, call me.
Yeah.
So what happens?
So I did. I told him, I think I initially texted him back, and I just told him, like, some of the things I was going through, some of the symptoms and feelings I was having. And he was like, yep, I get it. I've been there. Eventually we connected by talking, and he offered to give me his next appointment with his psychologist.
This is a different psychologist.
Different psychologist,
Okay, different psychologist.
And he offered his appointment because it would have been months for me to get in, so that I could get in right away.
So you get in to see this new psychologist, and what happens?
Completely different experience from what I had just gone through. I told her, what had happened, and as with every psychologist since then, I get a lot of apologies, like, that's not how it's supposed to be done. This is not what we do. This is not how it should be done. Like, I'm sorry you've gone through this. And I'm not like a pity party kind of person, so I really don't deal well with people like feeling sorry for me, I guess. But really, she just educated me on what had happened, what PTSD was, that it was an injury, that she just really helped to get me educated to know what I was feeling and going through was normal. Because I thought I was broken. Like, this was the rest of my life. I was never going to be who I used to be.
Right.
And so
eventually what happens with her? Did she, was she the one that prescribed you the
eventually,
medication?
yeah. So I started seeing her like November of 2015.
Okay.
And then,
and you're still working, by the way.
I'm still working.
Still working.
Yeah. And then I would say in March, I don't remember what if there was anything specific that set it off or whatever, but in March, after meeting with her, she took me off the street, and I then felt reprimanded. Like, now I have to go home. I can't even work anymore.
So the one thing that you figured was keeping you in line and keeping you some type of sane, let's say, right? The one thing you knew how to deal with every day was work, and now whoosh, she pulls it away.
Right. So also at that point, then she prescribed me a little cocktail of medication to help with the anxiety, I guess.
And what does this cocktail end up doing to you?
Oh, it totally numbed me to everything. I mean, on one hand, it was good. I wasn't feeling like the anxiety. I wasn't feeling the sadness. I wasn't as angry anymore. But on the other hand, like I felt nothing. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel love. I didn't feel anything.
And I want you guys to see the interesting thing here. And we've talked about this prior, right? There's a formula. Here's the secret, right? There's a formula for us to get what we want out of life. And when that formula gets screwed up, then we get screwed up. Most of us get sideways when we start dealing with our emotions first, right? With the feelings. Whenever you lead with feelings, what happens? You're either really high, or you're really low, or you're really left, or you're really right. Very rarely are you exactly where you need to be, right? Feelings are good as long as they're taking us where it is that we want to go, right? So we don't lead with feelings, we lead with facts. Facts come first, then the feelings, right? Because the facts plus the feelings allow us to then focus on what it is that we want. So in this case, the feelings were going sideways. So instead of going back to the beginning of the equation and dealing with the facts, we just said, let's eliminate these feelings here and see what happens.
Right.
So there were no feelings. You hadn't gone back to the facts. So there was no focus in your life.
Right.
You literally had no idea where you were going, what you were doing. You were just kind of wandering around.
Right.
And what was this doing to your life? What was this doing to you?
I mean, I was still, I was able to participate in things, but, I wasn't there mentally. Emotionally, nothing. I stayed home. I don't even know, like, if I woke up, if I, when any of those things happened. I had dug a really good hole for me that was comfortable, and I wanted to stay there. I stopped everything, contact with friends. I didn't even tell any of my partners at work that I wasn't coming back to work. Then I got the note, dropped it off with my sergeant, and I left as quick as I could get out of there.
All right. So she just like kind of brushed over this. So we're going to slow it down and go back to this. So in this moment of time, everything's like just completely numb. You're not feeling anything. You're not knowing what to do. And so you end up resigning.
Not yet.
Okay.
I still stayed with them a
So
few
you
more
basically
months.
told them, I'm not coming back to work for a while.
Yep.
Okay. So this is prior. My apologies. So prior to this, you've already like, I'm not telling anybody what's going on, but I'm not coming back.
Right.
Because I don't know how to deal with this because, well, they took away my ability to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening in your personal life? Like when you would go out?
I didn't. I didn't go out. If I had to, like, I didn't even go to the grocery store anymore because I could. So auditory was like huge for me. All of a sudden, where I wouldn't have noticed things in the past, I could hear everything. And it was just a trigger for me. So if I went to the grocery store alone, I would start to like hear. I would describe it in the past like as if I had multiple personalities and everybody was just talking to me at once. I heard every conversation at the same time. That none of them involved me, but I could hear them all happening, and it just made me feel crazy. And then I would start to panic and think like, okay, now everybody knows I'm panicking. I need to get out of here. Like I just can't even be around people anymore. And so I didn't.
The rare occasions that you would go out with your significant other, like what were those experiences like?
I essentially just hid behind him for everything. Like he all of a sudden spoke for me. He did everything. I literally wasn't able to communicate with people. If we went out, say we went out to dinner or something, I would have to just look at him the entire time because if I, which is different because cops normally sit and watch everything. We want to know everything that is moving around us. I could no longer do that because the second I noticed something happening around me, I would just start to have a panic attack. So I had to literally focus on my meal and staring at him, or I could not be a part of it.
So how many months did this go on for?
I stayed home for a couple months at that point. I went back to work. I started feeling like, okay, I think I'm getting better. Probably the medication had probably kicked in to some degree. But I had been away from everything. I started to miss it. I started to feel just better, I guess. So in May, I went back to work. The end of May, went back to work. And my shift then was Monday through Thursday. So got back to work Monday morning. And I would say instantly, like briefing happened. And all of a sudden, I was back to just feeling like crap again.
And was anybody like talking to you or?
No, I mean, it was like nobody, I mean, like I said, I don't think anybody knew what to say to me, but nobody even like asked how I was doing, if I was okay, like if I needed anything. Nobody wanted to know any bit of what I had been going through.
So not only were you feeling isolated at home, you go to the one place where you like, I know this place and I feel comfortable here, and at least I'll be in the group again.
Right.
And you get there and it's like the complete opposite. Like you're shunned.
Yeah, and and then when they were talking, like it was just normal, like nothing had happened. I mean, I felt like not only did they not understand it, but did they even believe that I was going through something, I didn't know if they thought I was faking it to get out of work. Like, we'd seen several people at this point leave work because they were having some kind of problem and work-related problems and stuff. And so there had been those that people talked about that nobody believed was actually going through something, that it was an excuse to get a retirement, to get out of having to be there. So I then felt like, well, shit, is that what people think I'm doing, And I loved my job. Like, policing has been my whole life. So it wasn't something for me that I didn't want to be a part of. At the time, I didn't want to be a part of it because I just felt like shit. Like, my head hurt all the time. I was always sick. And I just wasn't right. Like, I just hated everything about it. But I mean, like, the healthy me knows that's not how I really feel. It's just what it was.
But at that point, this is what's going on. And so, how long does this last before like you bounce from work again?
In July of 2016, I went on a call. The call came out. There was a guy had taken a girl home the night before. Now it's morning, he wants her to leave, and she's chasing him around the house with a knife, trying to kill him. I was just a couple blocks away, so I knew I was going to be the first one there, and I knew that anybody I worked with was at least a couple miles away. And it was the first time ever in my career that I questioned my ability to do my job. I thought, you always mentally prepare when you go to these calls. What am I going to do? What am I going to find? How am I going to react? Like, you just have to be ready for those calls. And so that would have been my normal process. And so normally I would have prepared and I would have been like confident in my training and my abilities to just go and handle the job. That day was the first time that I hesitated, and I thought, will I be able to shoot this woman if she comes at me or comes at him with a knife? And that just bit of hesitation just made me, like, just rocked my world. Like, I never thought I would be that person that was afraid. I mean, every department has those people you don't want to go on a call with, unfortunately. We all know that officer that you're like, oh God, if I have to go on this serious call, please don't, cancel this backup because they're going to do more harm than good.
Exactly. So you see yourself like literally freaking out again, but this time at work. And what ends up happening?
The call ended up being nothing. Like, it was all just a BS call. But just having had that moment, I went back to my psychologist and I told her, like, this is what it was like today, and I don't like that. Like, that's not who I am. I don't want to put my partners at risk. I don't want to put myself at risk. Like, if I'm not feeling like I can go there and be effective, I should not be out on the street with them. And so she took me off, and she was like, even if I had said I don't want to be out there, she was like, just the fact that you're thinking that, you're done. Like, I'm not letting you go back and do this right now. So she initially just took me off of work for a couple months, was the time frame. We were going to reevaluate after a couple months. And then somewhere within those couple months, nothing got any better. Like, in the past, if I took a little time off, my headaches would subside. I would start feeling a little better and more confident about going back and just being okay again. but nothing. Like, I felt like the more I was away from it, the better I felt.
Yeah. So you're still in your personal life, just kind of coasting through, numb to everything. Work, you're completely like freaking out. Is this going to work out? Is it not? I don't know what to do anymore.
Right.
What ends up happening?
I made that decision. Like, I literally showed up to work one day, went and saw my supervisor and said, I'm done. I'm not coming back. I'm not even going to take the time to go through a retirement. Like, I mean, I dealt with workers' comp. Like, that was just a shit show, the entire process. I mean, not only did I feel like I had nobody at work helping me or there supporting me, but then, like, in all of my hearings and such, I had the town people were there, but they were on the side of workers' comp. Like, nobody was there to support me. So now all these people that I'm working for all the time, I saw them as being against me. Like, they were there to prove that my situation had nothing to do with work and it was just all me, and that they shouldn't have to take care of anything for me.
So, hung out to dry.
Yes.
Haven't we heard that one before? So here you are trying to deal with what's going on at work, trying to deal with what's going on in your personal life, and trying to deal with what's going on with workman's comp, which basically feels like everybody's ganging up against you.
Right.
And so eventually you said, that's it.
I'm done. I'm done.
So you're turning your papers. You're done.
Yep.
You go home. Does anything change?
You know, I did have like this huge sense of relief. Like, I don't have to deal with it. Like, I don't know. I think I probably just thought, if I'm done, like, all the deaths, everything is just going to go away. I'll never have to deal with it again.
Right. But was that the case?
No, not at all.
No, it wasn't the case. Wouldn't you know? It wasn't the job.
Right.
So you're still dealing with this, and you go back to the psychologist a few times, and eventually, like, what happens? What do you tell her?
So I'd continued seeing her, and it was about almost a year later. I was still on medication, and then about a year later, I decided I'm done. Like, I'm not going forward or backwards. Like, I'm at a standstill. Something needs to change, and I don't like feeling the way that I feel, because I wasn't really having like as many panic attacks. I wasn't having all those issues as bad anymore, but I still wasn't me. And I went back in and I saw the psychiatrist at the psychologist's office, who was the one that prescribed medication or wrote the prescriptions, same thing, I guess. Saw her, and I told her, I think I'm done taking medication. I want to try it without the meds. And she said no.
Oh, what? So listen, this is what happens, and I want you guys to see this. Sometimes it's prescribed sedation. Sometimes it's sedation on our own. When things aren't working out or we don't know how to deal with something, we always go to sedation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's prescribed, like it's a medication that our doctors give us. Sometimes it's alcohol.
Right.
Sometimes it's women. Sometimes it's porn. Sometimes it's legal or illegal drugs. Like, there's always something out there that we think by taking this or by doing this, I won't have to deal with reality.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it was prescribed for you.
Right.
And here's the uniqueness of this. Like, you're trying to get off of it. You're like, listen, I want to deal with my reality. Like, I actually want to deal with it. And they tell you no.
Right. Yeah.
So what did that do to you?
It was frustrating. I mean, I knew that I wanted to change it. I was going to I've never been a pill popper, so I don't even like taking ibuprofen. I don't like doing any of that. So just having gone on this medication was a huge thing for me anyway. I didn't like the altered state of mind it put me in. So I knew I wanted to get off. I knew going on that it wasn't a forever thing for me. So when I was ready and I asked her and we talked about it and she said no, I went home and I stopped taking them anyway.
Boom. Done.
Yeah.
What ended up happening after you took the medication off of the table?
I had feelings again.
What? What? That one piece of the equation that we said you needed in order to get what you want, that was missing, which is why your life was just kind of there, not just floating around.
Right.
Came back.
Yes. And it wasn't all good. I mean, I had negative feelings. I had the bad feelings. but I had good feelings again. Like I could enjoy my family and my
Wow.
children, and I could be happy for their successes and just life again.
So how has your life shifted since you basically decided to take back control?
Um, it's still up and down. There's some good days, mostly good days. I do have some, some bad days that'll creep up every now and then, but they're not even like, I shouldn't even say days anymore because they don't last all day. I'll have some bad moments. Something will come up. Something will happen. I'll see something on TV. Something that'll just bring up something from the past, something work related, and it'll just kind of get me in a weird way. But you know, having seen the counselors for so long that I was seeing, I feel like I learned a lot about how to deal with it, um, enough so that when it does happen, when I do get in a really crappy way, I can at least pull myself out of it or know that it's not forever, that it might just be that day, it might be that night, but I'll wake up and it's a new day and I can move on.
So I love what you said is they were able to teach you some of this formula, right? And here's the funny thing is most psychologists or psychiatrists don't actually know this formula. Shh, don't tell them. But they helped you shift from the feelings back to the facts.
Right.
Like what's really
Yep.
going on here, right? But what they didn't do is insert the rest of the stuff.
Right.
And here's the cool part. Like, I want you guys to see this. Try this next time. Like, when you're either throwing a temper tantrum or life isn't working the way that you want, pause, go back, look at the facts. What do you really want, right? And then what feelings are going to actually help you get what you want? Focus on getting what you want, and then guess what happens? You get what you want. It's an interesting formula. It actually works. Like, this is what I use in my life, and this is what I'm sharing with you. Like with every man or woman that I coach, every person that I coach, every coaching, everything that I've done, all centers around this. Why does my life work right now? Literally because I have to apply this formula. And just like Veronica, there's some days that I wake up, I don't want to get out of bed. Like if you're following me on Facebook the other day, I had this nice video where I sat in bed for 40 minutes. 40. I never do this. 40 minutes. I didn't want to. Like I was throwing my own little temper tantrum in bed. I don't want to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's go back. Like, is that a fact or is that a feeling? No, it's just a feeling. That's all it is.
Right.
And these feelings, if we're not careful, they lead us sideways, So by you taking back control of your life, by you being able to look at the facts and then process things the other way, like you're at this point now where you're having, like, what is your career now?
I'm in real estate
You're
now.
in real estate. So you're having success as a realtor, right?
Yep.
You're back on top and back in control when it comes to being mom.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So your life is working again.
Right.
I want you guys to see this. Like, she went from this deep, dark place where probably thought she was never going to work again, medicated, like all these things that were not working in her favor, to now she's back in control of her life and she's able to, quote unquote, function, right?
Right.
Listen, there was never anything wrong with her to begin with. Somebody else told her she had PTSD. Somebody told her she couldn't
Right.
handle it. Somebody else told her. And then just like all of us, right, we accept that.
Right.
And once we accept that, it becomes how we act.
Mm-hmm.
We act broken. We act this way. We act this. Like if somebody calls you a bitch, all of a sudden what? You're a bitch, right? You're like, fine, I'm a bitch. I'm going to show you I'm a bitch.
Right.
But then if somebody says, man, you are the nicest woman I've ever met. You're like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
And then you're the nicest woman to everybody.
Right.
So listen, like we create our own labels. I want you to understand that. Just because things aren't working doesn't mean you're broken, and it doesn't mean that you are a certain way. Some people react with anger, some people with isolation, some people with sadness, some people with fear. Like, it doesn't mean that that's who you are. It just means you're dealing with some stuff.
Right.
So cool. Learn how to deal with it. If you keep thinking that you have to do it yourself and that you're broken, eventually you are going to break.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, let me ask you actually. What advice do you have for somebody who's going through any type of situation like this, where they've had a critical incident, something's happened to them and they don't know how to process it? Like what advice do you have for them?
First thing, just reach out to somebody, talk to somebody. I mean, there's enough of us now that you can find someone who's been there, done that. Like, even if you're afraid to talk to somebody you currently work with, reach out to somebody.
So Veronica's on Facebook.
I am.
She's on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I told you guys, she is on LinkedIn. That is right, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But reach out to her, reach out to me, reach out to
Yes.
somebody, and we're more than willing to lend an ear, to help you out, to kind of help center your life again.
Right.
There's plenty of people other than us. Like there's lots of projects. There's
Mhm.
I think the Code 9 project.
The Code 9
Code 9
project.
project. There's a lot of different programs and a lot of different people out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But just like she said, like reach out. You're not alone. You're not broken.
No.
You're not alone. There's a few different things that you can do to get back to where you need to be.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank Veronica for being on the podcast. Thank you again. Thank you for sharing your story. This is so cool. Like she was like nervous, excited, like everybody is. But thank you for sharing that and showing people that there is a way to get from the bottom of this pit, like back
Right.
out, to get your life back, to get moving in the direction that you want to go again.
Definitely.
So thank you for that. And again, if you're interested in what it is that I teach, what it is that I show people, we're going to have this free 7-day challenge, this program for you to kind of help you figure out where it is that you are right now in life, what is it that you want, and most importantly, how it is that you can get it. But as always, I want you guys to stay safe, and we'll see you